Today, we're diving into a really unique and, let's be honest, often misunderstood personal experience. We're going to look at where identity, these involuntary feelings, and faith all intersect, drawing from some firsthand accounts.
So, let's start with this question. What does it actually mean to feel not quite human? That's a pretty complex feeling, right? It's at the very core of what we're talking about today. So let's try to unpack what this experience is really all about.
Okay, first step, let's get our definitions straight. The sources we're looking at are super clear about what this experience is, and just as important, what it isn't.
And here it is, therianthropy. And there are two words here you've really got to focus on, involuntary and non-physical. This is key. It's not a choice people make. It's described as this really deep, personal experience that just is.
Now, this slide gets at a really critical distinction that causes a lot of confusion. The sources make it clear that therianthropy is about identifying with an animal, like using an animal's traits to understand your own feelings. It is absolutely not about identifying as an animal, which would be believing you are literally, physically a non-human creature. That's a whole different thing.
All right, on to section 2, what therianthropy is not. Because sometimes knowing what something isn't is the best way to understand it. And our sources are really keen on busting some common myths here.
Yeah, there is a ton of misinformation floating around out there, so let's just go ahead and set the record straight on a few big ones.
Okay, let's just be blunt. All of these are completely false. That whole litter box rumor, it actually started as political rhetoric, believe it or not. The furry fandom, that's a totally separate community built around art and costumes. And the sources are really firm that therianthropy isn't inherently sexual and, this is a big one, it's not about denying your humanity. Therianthropists know they are human.
So if it's not any of that stuff, how does this experience actually, express itself? Let's talk about what that looks like, both inside and out.
A huge part of the experience often involves what are called shifts, and these are internal sensory things. A phantom shift, for example, is when someone feels a body part that isn't physically there, like a tail or wings. And then a mental shift is described as feeling like your mind is in an animal's headspace for a little while. But it's not all just internal feelings. The experience can show up in external ways too. Some people wear what's called therio gear, like tails or masks, as a form of self-expression, or sometimes to help with a feeling called species dysphoria, which is the sense of disconnect with their human body. And another big expression is physical activity.
One really popular activity is quadrupedics. And let's be clear, this is a full-body sport, not just crawling around. The sources emphasize that it takes a lot of strength and stamina, so safety is a huge deal. You gotta warm up, build your strength slowly, and use proper form. And that means landing on your palms, not your fingers, so you don't get hurt.
And that brings us to the real heart of our explainer today, reconciling faith and identity. From a Christian perspective, how does someone even begin to make sense of this kind of personal experience?
So here's the big question the source material tackles head on, and the answer it gives is a pretty clear yes, but it comes with a really important way of looking at what identity actually is.
So the model they present is to think about identity in layers. At the very center, you have your core identity, which for a Christian is rooted in Christ. Then, everything else, your hobbies, your personality, and yes, even lycanthropy, are seen as facets of your experience that surround that core.
And this right here is the key takeaway. For a Christian therianthrope, their fundamental identity, who they are at their very root, is their faith in Christ. Therianthropy is an involuntary experience they live with and have to navigate, but it doesn't define them. It's a part of them, for sure, but it's not the foundation they're built on.
And that brings us to our final thought for today, which is a message about inherent worth that comes directly from the source material itself.
I mean, this quote really sums up the whole message. The ultimate conclusion is that no matter what your personal experiences are, whether you feel not quite human or not, every single person is created with incredible value and is worthy of love. It's a pretty powerful message of acceptance, coming from a really unique perspective.